Good evening and welcome to episode 3 of Spooky Town Tales. I'm your host again, Morgan, and I'm here with my special guest for the third week in a row. Make him feel welcome, it's Jimmy Barr.
Good evening.
I think he does actually enjoy it. Do you enjoy it?
Oh, it's the trifecta. You've got to get the trifecta.
You've got to get the trifecta for the win. This is true. He's come back. He's done me another solid, and we've just recovered from a pretty serious bout of the giggles, which I'm hoping doesn't come back mid-recording because I can feel it building. But I'll try and stay serious enough to deliver some terrifying tales, which is the theme of this evening's episode.
Yep, pull it together.
I've got to pull it together. So I'll be featuring an array of stories, no particular theme this evening, just ones that I have found particularly alarming. So, I don't lose sleep over much. I really don't. Jimmy can vouch for that. I used to watch ghost shows to relax.
To calm down, as it were.
Yeah.
Load of crap in my books.
Load of crap. Jimmy thinks it's a load of crap for him, but he's seen the results. It would calm me down. Scary movies are like my switch off, I suppose you could call it. So I've seen a lot of them, and it takes an awful lot to rattle me enough to struggle to go to sleep. And a couple of these, they really did have me checking the doors and the windows. One in particular, which I'm going to just put it out there, straight out there, is the scariest story I've ever heard.
It's a big call. You've had a lot of scary stories.
This one for me, just everything about it, it's just that nothing's going to top it. I don't think I'll ever hear one. I mean, I know it's a big call, and it's early in the series to be calling it, but this one, it rattled me. Yeah. It did. It really did. So look forward to that one. I'm not going to start with that one. I'm just going to sneak up on you with it from behind the bushes. Slap you with it. So, are you ready, folks? Sit down, get comfy, turn out the lights, pour yourselves a drink, and you know what to do. Prepare to be spooked. So this evening, I'm actually going to start the show with a UFO story. And this one comes from my dear mama, Zanti. Yes, that's her name, Zanti. Of course my mother's name is Zanti. Now, she told me this story this morning. Are you finished rummaging on the bed?
Just move myself.
He's just pulling circles like a dog does, getting comfy. Okay. We're actually on the
now
bed
that the
recording this evening.
I'll get back to the story.
You're comfy
So,
and
this story occurred to my mum when she was a newlywed, and her and my dad had just had their first child, my dear sister Amber, and they were renting a house in Gooseberry Hill. And for those of you that don't know where Gooseberry Hill is, it's up in the hills outside of Perth, Western Australia. So the place where they were, Gooseberry Hill, the house was on like the top of a hillside, and it looked down into like the forest. It was on the edge of the national park, so they could see down into the valley from the back of where like the kitchen living area was. There was a whole wall of like the glass sliding doors that were very big in the 80s. You know, you had your four.
Yeah, big time, yeah.
Yeah.
That was very common.
Lots of glass, lots of windows because of the views as well.
Yep.
So this was where they'd moved, and my sister was still a baby. And this particular evening, Mum and Dad had gone to bed. Amber was asleep in her cot, and then she'd woken up needing a feed. And so, another thing to mention, the zigzag is very close to where this house was in Gooseberry Hill.
Right.
And the zigzag is a section of road up in the Lesmurdie kind of area, and it's renowned. It's where people go to look for UFOs.
Right.
They're a constant, if you go there more often than not, you were definitely going to see something.
It's where your dad used to rally up.
It's where Dad used to rally. Where he flipped great grannies. No, I don't think that was that particular. Or was it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that my dad flipped to
Used to be a good rally track out there.
Yeah. But he borrowed my great granny's beetle. Was it a beetle?
Yeah, beetle.
And
it fell over.
It fell over. Had a bit of a stack. Some are up there, but yes, the zigzag is where young hoons in the 70s would take their rides. Also, go to park. Good spot to park with your lady. And also, great spot to spot UFOs. Yeah. It was a common thing that you did in the 70s and the 80s.
All around great area.
It's a good spot.
A good spot.
Hence, Mum and Dad had to live close to the action, so they'd rented a house in Gooseberry Hill. So back to the story. So this particular night, she gets up to feed Amber, and she goes to the fridge because she can hear this, a really loud humming noise, and she's thinking, great, the fridge is crapping out. Young couple.
Mm-hmm.
These sorts of things are catastrophic, as we know. Yeah. When your fridge dies and you're a young couple with a baby, it's a pain in the ass. So she gets up, she walks through into this kitchen area that has all this glass, and she goes to the fridge, and she's put her ear on the fridge, and she's like, okay, where is this humming coming from? Because it wasn't from the fridge. The fridge was normal. Mm. But it was still this loud, horrible, vibraty hum. And so she's like, what the shit is that? But she turns around from the fridge because she's feeling freaked out because it's getting very loud. And as she turns to look out the window, out to where the noise is coming from, because she's realised it's coming from outside, she can see in the valley an elongated egg-shaped thing just hovering and floating through the valley. And it was semi-illuminated. She said she could see to the point that she could see little window bits on it.
Whoa.
So it was like a plane, but she was like, what the hell kind of plane is this? And why is it so low? It's going to crash. And it was going as slow as a hot air balloon, just super slow, just going across the valley.
Whoa.
So she's freaking out. She's proper freaking out. Going, you know what happens?
Yeah.
You start heavy breathing. Yeah. She's freaking out. She's got to feed the baby. The baby's crying. She's, oh my God. So she's freaking out, and then so she thinks, instant reaction, turn the light on. Now, me being me, having lived in Girraween, or near Girraween, we know that's the biggest mistake to make. If there's someone or something outside, you leave the light off. You have the upper hand, so you can see them, but they can't see you.
Yeah.
So not knowing what the hell was going on, she flew off pure instinct, flicked the light on. Big mistake, because then this thing stops, sharply turns, and starts moving towards the house.
Whoa.
And then this massively bright light starts sort of swirling around whatever the frig this thing is. So Mum runs to the bedroom with Amber. She'd grabbed Amber en route. Jumps in the bed with Dad, wakes him up, and, Steve! And Dad being, what the bloody hell's going on? And wakes him up. He sees this light coming through the bedroom window, sweeping in big waves, round and round in their bedroom. So Dad's like, Jesus Christ. And Mum's like, is it a helicopter? What is it? So he gets up saying, it's probably just a bloody helicopter, Auntie. Yeah. He looks out the window, says nothing, hops into bed, rolls over, and says, just go to sleep. And so Mum knows he's seen it. He's admitted to seeing it. He's got up to look at this thing and pretended he hasn't seen it. He's
Completely freaked out.
Whoa.
That's his reaction.
Yeah.
Just no.
Not real.
Yeah. So
Whoa.
he hops into bed. Next morning, denies the whole thing.
The end.
The end. This is the story. This is the story of my poor mum's poor mum's life, because that's my dad's coping mechanism. He's very Victorian. He's like, nope.
Wow, wait.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
It's really crazy. So I'm not surprised because of where it was.
Yeah.
And I've heard countless stories from the Les Murdy zigzag area.
Yeah.
Of sightings. But Dad had a UFO story he told us all several times when I grew up. If you ask him about it now, it never happened.
Another one forgotten, lost to the winds of time.
Yeah, because Dad used to work up north in the bush.
Yeah.
And he had a little, what are they called? Wild boar called Grunt. It was a baby. That was like the mascot. He had a pet wild boar. But up there, they all saw some weird stuff.
Yeah.
And he told us about it, but now he denies it ever happened.
What happened up there?
They saw a craft.
Yeah.
Multiple people saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they saw it, and they saw it land, and they saw weird lights. Yeah.
Not the kind of person I would question.
He wouldn't. Yes, if he was. Yeah.
You would never just kind of go, nah, that's.
This is why we're all like, what?
Yeah, as you would.
Yeah. But now he's sort of blocked it out of his head. Yeah. I will ask him again, though, folks. I'll try and get the story out of him.
That sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a pretty cool story. Thanks, Mum. Thanks for sharing your creepy UFO story with me. Now, when I was little, and I blame it on the X-Files, which I'm now reliving and making Jimmy relive, in case you haven't noticed, X-Files is on Vice every weeknight, guys. Get on it. Tonight, Jimmy got to see the Eugene Toombs episode, which was my most scary episode. Like, freaked me out.
I can see how it would freak you out as a kid. Not too bad now.
Not too bad now, because the graphics terrible, and his contacts didn't fit properly, all that stuff. But as a little kid.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, it was the alien thing that I used to be terrified I was going to get abducted by aliens because of the X-Files.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for that story, Mum. I'm going to... hopefully I don't just slip back into wanting... I wanted Dad to put steel big shutters on the windows. Yeah. I was so convinced. Yeah.
Tinfoil hats.
Now, on tinfoil hats. They work, okay? Don't question them. So, on creepy things, I'm going to slip this one out of the bushes for you right now, because I can't wait. Because it's just too good, and if I don't get it over and done with, I might chicken out. So I caught up with a mate of mine last week, and I rode my bike to his house through waist-deep fog, misty, scary as shit fog, in between showers, to collect you guys these fabulous stories. So shout out to Will. Thank you for the scariest story I've ever heard. Are you ready, guys? Are you ready?
I'm not quite, but go for it.
You're just going to have to be. Okay. So this happened a few years ago. Now, this is 100% true. This is not made up. It is not paranormal. But, yeah, it's going to freak you the hell out. I have a friend who was from Melbourne and was dating a guy in Perth. They had flown over to Melbourne to see her family, and the parents had gone out for the night, leaving my friend and her boyfriend in charge of her baby brother. He was upstairs asleep in his cot when the parents went out, and they were downstairs watching TV. All of a sudden, the little boy jumped up and started crying and screaming. So they got up, went upstairs and tried to settle him. They calmed him down and lay him back in his cot, and eventually he went back to sleep. They went back downstairs, only to find 5 minutes later, the little boy had woken up, hysterical again. When they get upstairs to his room, this time he's standing up at the edge of the cot, crying and pointing at his teddies in the back corner of the room. There was a massive stack of teddies that took up the whole corner of his bedroom. He was still standing, hysterically crying and pointing at this massive pile of teddies.
She started getting very concerned because he was very distraught, and she was struggling to settle him. Finally, though, they calmed him once again, got him back to sleep, and went back downstairs. They'd barely sat back down when he woke up again for the third time. This time he was completely frantic, screaming and pointing at the teddies. Now this little kid was only like 1.5.
Yeah.
But by that age, they generally, they settle. Unless they're sick, they generally will settle. So she knew something was up. The boyfriend knew something was up. So the kid's still pointing at these teddies, and there was one particular teddy that he kept freaking out about. So at this point, this friend just decides, I'm going to call Mum and find out if there's something like that I should know. Is he having night terrors, or is there something I should know? So she calls the mum and says, look, Mum, one of the toys that you've bought him is scaring him. To which the mum asks, which one? And then she replies, the big life-size clown one. Then Mum responds, what? I don't have a life-size clown teddy. She grabbed the boy and ran downstairs and called the police. The police rocked up, and what they found was a man had dressed as a clown, broken into the house. He'd placed himself amongst a pile of teddies in the child's room.
What?
True story. He'd been in there the whole time when they were in there settling this kid.
What the heck?
And they found out this particular man is a convicted pedophile. Now
What the hell?
how
man?
would that make you feel? Now, if you can tell me a freakier story than that, go ahead. I challenge you. Send it in.
That is insanity.
Yeah. Now, I'm sorry to start the program with this because the rest of the stories
And
probably
bang, there it
they're
is.
not going to compare. I might as well retire. But I had to do it. I had to tell it.
Wow. I got nothing.
Sometimes people are more freaky than the paranormal.
Yeah. No, I'll second that.
Now, if you've got freaky stories about freaky people, send them in. I'm not specific to paranormal.
Freaky people.
Freaky people. We likes the freaky people. So thank you, Will, for telling me that story, especially when I had to ride my bike home at 10 o'clock at night through the dark streets of Donnybrook with streetlight interference phenomena, knowing if I got under a streetlight, the one of 3 in town,
There's only 2 down that road.
oh God, no, I think there's only 2, there was a high chance they'd go out. So thank you. And yes, this big diaper baby probably checked the doors and windows about 8 times, and I set a trap near the one window that was cracked a little bit because the fire was on. I put tea light candles on top of a pillow and then put a bit of wood underneath so that if anyone moved the curtain, they'd fall and smash and wake me up. And then I was going to lay the smack down. So yes, big time rattled me with that one. Thank you, Will.
Good one.
We've got a few more of his, or at least one more of his this evening. He has had some pretty freaky things. He's got some stories, I'll tell you that much. Bloody hell. All right. So how are we going to follow from
I don't
that?
know. Just move on to something else because that's too much.
It's too much. It's too much. One thing that Will and I did talk about were Wadachis.
Mm.
Have you heard about Wadachis?
No.
Wadachis are an Aboriginal folklore little creature, little cheeky buggers, as my mate Joel says, that wreak havoc on you, and they tend to attach themselves to an individual.
Yeah.
And so the story goes is that they're passed down through families. So someone can assign a Wadachi to somebody.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But basically, they're a little hairy creature with a little tail and they have red eyes, and usually just before someone will see one, or when you know one's around, you get this smell of like wet leaves and like almost like creek beddy kind of smell mixed with sort of a wet animal kind of stink. So
wet
that's
dog.
Wet dog
Wet
kind
dogs.
of. Yeah, that's the smell that's associated with it. From what I've heard, it's more humorous stories as opposed to scary with these little buggers.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you saw something with glowing red eyes that was hairy that'd probably freak you out a little bit.
Not too bad if it's mischievous though. Generally,
You'd still be pretty freaked out.
You'd be freaked out, but you could pass that off not too badly.
Yeah. Yep. Unlike the I'm just going to recommend, if you want a good scare, to jump on the Yowie Hunters site, yowiehunters.com.au, I think it is. I will put it in the description of this episode on the Facebook page to find it. Have a look at the Boyup Brook sighting, because
I'll have to have a look. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, I can't read it out on my show because it is copyright to the Yowie Hunters, but jump on the website and have a read because it is freaky.
Yeah.
Yep. And that occurred to a bunch of people driving back from Boyup Brook Country Music Festival. It was like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Down that back road.
Yeah. That's a pretty windy road down through there.
Yeah, pretty isolated.
Yep.
But it's the description of this thing that just got me.
Just a bit too much.
It's too much.
Yep.
It's like straight out of a horror movie. So jump on there and have a look at that one. I'm going to go into more of Wadachi's. That was another thing that I'm like, it's a damp night. Everything smells like swamp and wet dog. I'm riding my 70s cruiser bike down the streets going, holy shit, I'm going to get attacked by a Wadachi or a clown. Oh no, something gross. Yep, so thanks again for that, Will. I've also caught up with a lovely lady who is from the Coven down here, and she gave me some pretty cool insight into the witches of the Southwest. There's actually witches pretty much everywhere, so it seems. Yeah, there's little groups all over the place.
Yeah.
They're pretty well organised and managed. They're not they're just, just like you and me.
Have a life choice they've made.
A life choice. It's their religion, so it's their lifestyle.
Yep.
It's sort of made me a little bit less sort of frightened of the concept, especially when I explained the cave witch thing to her. She says, well, that makes sense because we all generally will walk off into the wilderness and you'll find an isolated spot to practice, and it's...
Oh, really? So the one from Margs is a little bit explained then?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's still, to your everyday schmo, not to someone like me who's a total kook who thinks these things are wonderful and interesting, but it's still a stumbling across a bunch of women.
Yeah, it would still freak you out.
But let me assure you, having met this lovely lady, that they all seem to be quite lovely people. Just, they're doing their thing, living their lives the way they want. Yeah, so it's more of a lifestyle thing. But I will go into more of that. She's given me some interesting information. But one thing she did lead me down was a documentary that she featured in the 80s. And in that documentary, I've discovered who I had no idea about her. And I feel foolish that I had no idea about this artist until now because of all the people I should know about her.
Yeah.
Rosaline Norton was the first Aussie witch who was ever sort of out, as you will, out of the closet as a witch, and she was proud of it. And so she was a self-proclaimed witch. Now, this is in the 1950s.
Wow.
So imagine how fuddy-duddy
the
world... And she would do, basically, she lived in the red light district in King's Cross, so proper, debaucherous, where all the strip clubs were.
Quite the neighbourhood.
Big time. And she spoke out very loudly of witchcraft and magic, and she experimented publicly with trances, and she was basically like a total bohemian.
Wow.
And quite alarming looking. Like, she looks like your cliche. She's a very cool bohemian lady, but her face, just the way she dressed and everything, is straight out of a storybook.
Wow.
She basically had her artwork, all her paintings had deep pagan roots, and
the public found them very offensive. So the way she put it, she'd get these dreams and visualise these images and then wake up and she'd paint them.
Yeah.
And they were very provocative. You know, there was boobs and there was devils and there was magic and sorcery and... So you just imagine 1950s.
Yeah, absolutely. In the 50s, that's a big no-no.
Yeah. So she was eventually arrested for obscenity. But, I mean, she lived out her life and, I just think she's... Look her up, guys. Rosalie Norton. Have a look at her artworks and just imagine them in the 1950s and imagine the stir it would have caused. So she's a pretty cool character, so I'm stoked that I've stumbled upon her. Cool lady. Yeah, really, really cool.
Good one.
So one thing I've spent this week researching was ley lines, which is what this lovely lady who's involved with covens with pagan, she said majority of the time where people will go to practice are along like ley lines and things like this. So
is that like the same as fault lines? Or
it's not the same as fault lines. So what ley lines are, it's sort of a line that connects spiritual places around the world or across the state. So they get handed down.
Yeah.
So it's a known thing from like the high priestess from 10 years ago will hand it to the next one and the next one and the next one. So it's something that's handed down. So these areas where they practice, no one really knows how they came across them, but they know that that's where you go.
Fair enough.
So there's several of those around that obviously are in the know kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Will was telling me that there's a spot he's going to go to with a friend who came across it one day when he was just off for a drive and went for a bit of a walk. And there's a section of forest down in the Greenbushes area, again, down in Greenbushes.
Yeah.
But I mean, what are they mining there?
I'm pretty sure that's lithium.
So I kind of think, me being me, trying to think science, geography, he's found a section in the woods or in the bush that all the trees and the plants grow outwards, and to the point that it's almost as if there is a force pulling these branches to spiral, like in curls.
Really?
In trees that otherwise wouldn't grow like that. So there's branches, there's a lot of deadfalls that are hanging almost as if they've been put there, like they all match up.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in patterns. There's weird markings on rocks that look sort of repetitious pattern in spiraling on the rock, which, I mean, it could be explained with like an insect through time has edged its way as the stones formed or something. But it just looks too much like, for me, I can't help but think perhaps this is along some sort of energy line.
Yeah.
Well. So what I've been doing is researching the geography and the way the state is formed, like what materials, what kind of foundation it's on, basically.
Yeah.
I've looked up magnetic field lines.
Yeah.
I've looked up the fault lines.
Yeah.
I've looked up the ley lines. And from what I can see, the southern part of WA does seem to be a section that does have a lot of various from different theoretical, because ley lines very much is just, there's no official, you can't find an official map of ley lines.
Yeah.
But the few that I've seen, the line that passes through Australia does cross through the southwest on about 3 of the ones I found. And I kind of thought, oh, that's interesting that it's come through WA, like straight through. And 2 of them went straight through Lesmurdy.
Really?
Yeah, and down through like where Greenbushes area would be. It's like straight through. Wow. So I found that quite interesting. The other thing I found was, most of the southwest up as far as like, I think it's like Geraldton, maybe a little bit higher, like Calberry.
Yeah.
Is Calberry higher up than Geraldton? Here, I'm showing my lack of knowledge of our own state. Northern knowledge, I'm a southerner. We're on like this weird... I'll go into this more and I'll show off with all the terminology.
Right.
But it's like a shield. They call it a shield.
Yeah.
The type of rock that's there. It's like a crust, a big, solid crust.
Yeah.
So it's pretty safe and stable. It's like the best kind of
there's not a lot of seismic activity.
Yeah, yep.
But it's developed, they're not 100% sure, there's 3 different theories as to how this particular type of crust forms. But I thought that's pretty cool. So I'll go more into that as well in future weeks, because I think all these things may play a part in it, because I do say things like quartz and magnetic. I was looking at the magnetic maps and the pulls and the angles of how.
Well, it's got to be something. I mean, magnets are, are a pretty intense thing as they are.
They're pretty magical.
They are very magical, and they're not really explained that well.
No.
So, for the whole Earth to be a magnet, that's,
Yeah.
it's, you've got to look at it in the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can't help but think that maybe people have a heightened sensitivity to magnetic fields.
Yeah.
And, these various things. I know that I get affected by things. We've talked about EMF in one of the previous episodes, but regarding your natural existing magnetic pull, I think there must be areas where it's stronger.
There'd have to be.
And it maybe causes these weird things to happen.
More so is what like you're saying, the shield could be made up from, or like the substance of what's underneath the Earth, because there is so many different properties to so many different stones that
it'd be interesting to see what the composition is of the majority of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll look into that, and hopefully we can sound pretty sciencey and fancy in a coming episode. Yeah, look out. Look out. Now, I have a nice, it's sort of nice. It's actually kind of tragic as well. But this one's a ghost story, and this was sent in by the beautiful Joelle. This actually occurred to her dad in the UK, but she lives here. And I said, well, that 100% is possible. I'll take it, because it's a really cool story.
Yeah.
So her dad, like mine, is a total skeptic, like 100%. I think, like my dad, I think there could be a ghost standing right in front of him, and he'd just go, oh, get out of the way, I'm trying to watch the telly. The Eagles game's on. Yeah, so same sort of deal, total mega skeptic, and he was working at a little place called the Sun Inn, which is in Chipping in Lancashire. And that is where she grew up, and I think her nan lived there as well. And I'm going to read you what happened to the dad first, and then I'm going to read you the story of the inn, and then you can see why it all ties in beautifully. So, my dad was in the bar collecting glasses after the pub had closed. He looked up and saw a woman walking up the stairs. He called out, thinking it was his work colleague. Then she didn't turn or respond. Having called out again to no avail, his colleague then entered the room from the opposite side of the pub to where the stairs were.
Whoa.
Which naturally alarmed, very much so alarmed. But hang on, how did you get... And apparently she says... He was like, but how did you get over there? You were just over there. And she's like, no, I've been out there the whole time. And so then he was like, ah, because up until now he was like, oh, it's all codswallop, there's no such thing as ghosts. But what I find so funny is that this being his first proper experience, and this experience has occurred in this exact pub by multiple people.
Yeah.
It's a common thing. She's got a name. They see her that often. Her name's Lizzie Dean.
Yeah.
She was a scullery maid in 1835. She killed herself upstairs in the attic.
Wow.
Hung herself. Absolutely tragic. And as the story goes, when she was 19, she'd met this, like a well-to-do fellow.
Yeah.
Who, being an asshole, schmoozed her, told her he'd marry her, lied, so that she'd sleep with him.
Right.
The oldest trick in the book. So she gives herself to him.
Right.
And then the day they're supposed to be married, because he's already said, oh, I've cancelled my engagement to her friend because she'd fallen in love with him. He lied,
And the day they were supposed to get married, she looked out the window and saw him marrying her best friend.
Wow.
Right in front of where she worked. No remorse whatsoever.
Wow.
So, poor Lizzie, heartbroken,
Poor Lizzie.
goes upstairs, takes her own life, while watching, like, the window. There's a window from where she did it. You can see straight out to where she would have been watching them come out of the church when it happened.
Wow.
Yep. And there was a note in her hand that pretty much lay a curse on the couple, on their children.
Oh.
Yep. So she just, let me see if I've written it down. So she lay this curse upon the couple's children and requested to be buried on the path that next to the path as you walk into the church, so that they would have to be reminded and feel the guilt of what they did.
Whoa.
Which they did. They followed through.
Fair enough.
Yep. So it's not only Joelle's dad that's seen Lizzie, as I said before. So apparently regularly people will claim they've passed her on the stairs. So they'll walk straight past, just hello, thinking she's dressed up.
It's really there.
Every single time someone sees her, they ask, "Oh, who was the beautiful girl in the period clothing?" So they think that she's.
Yeah.
It's so similar to the story we talked about last week,
With
where
the children.
she's so solid and real. People think she's there. Yeah.
So cool.
So multiple people have seen her on the stairs, passing by. Apparently, they say hi to her. People have interacted with her.
It's just Lizzie.
It's just Lizzie.
Yeah.
To the point a bloke from Edinburgh even opened the door, held the door for her. And he walks in and says, "Oh, who was that beautiful girl?" And where's the show? Exactly like the children's story. So isn't that wild?
That's pretty cool.
So she's that solid and regularly seen. And so this particular pub Joelle used to go to over 20 years ago, because her nana, lived around the corner, and they'd all go to the pub for the cooked Sunday lunch. Mm-hmm. And she said that when her and her siblings and they were kids, they just hated being out in the backyard.
Yeah.
At after dark. She said it was super scary. Super duper scary. I can understand why, because apparently there's been other reports of children and other sort of ghosties in the area. I think there's a stable as well as part of the building that's got some stuff going on. There's a graveyard across the road.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
enough to spook any kid.
Absolutely. Yep. So thank you so much, Joelle, for that story. That's so cool. Really cool. And I love that there's all this other evidence of this woman that your dad saw. Is so many people have seen, so it just validates it. Validates that he did see her and he can't deny it. No, sorry, Dad, the skeptic. Skeptic turned believer.
Yeah.
Okay, this next story it's another one from Will. Will provided the clown story earlier. Thank you, Will. This one actually took place in his house near where I grew up. So in Greenwood.
Right.
Now he tells me that the Greenwood area is actually, he was told by his friend's mum, who's a Noongar, that the Greenwood Kingsley area, Woodvale area, was where it was an Aboriginal law area. Right. So that's where boys would be sent for their trials, basically. So just a bit of a backstory before I start. I used to sit in the lounge room on our big L-shaped couch. The lounge used to be a carport, but was extended into the lounge room. The front door was off to the side, through a doorway, and the TV was off to the other side. Late at night, I would see a massive, massive black shadow standing halfway in the doorway, watching me.
Whoa.
It would stare at me, not sure what I was, and I wasn't sure what it was. It would give me the full heebie-jeebies, and I would go completely cold. I'd go so pale to the point I would have to get up and try and forget about it
and do other things, like change the channel or just try and shake this horrible feeling and make it go away. To get to my room, I would then have to walk through the living room to a hallway. My room was at the very end of that hallway. The hallway door was a sliding one, and it didn't have a runner at the bottom to stop it banging. So when you walked past it, the wind from you moving past would knock the door, and it would bounce and hit the door frame. On the night I saw the shadow man, when I would go to my room, the hall door would bounce again as if someone was walking right behind me. So as he would get to his room, so the door would bang when he would walk past it. He would have walked well past it, got to his room at the end of the hall, he'd hear the door bang again like someone was walking behind him.
Whoa.
Yeah, so this happened the nights he would see this shadow. He'd open his door, and then I'd go in my room and close it, and every time it felt like there was someone standing right on the other side as it would shut. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, his friend's mum, who's Noongar, he mentioned it to this big thing to her.
Yep.
And she explained that yes, this is an area that it's the men's place where the boys would be sent to be tested, and it usually lasts about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If they didn't survive it, then they go back to the starting place.
Okay.
So that's what the Greenwood Kingsley area was used for before white settlement.
Yeah.
She said the best thing to do is start a fire in your backyard, preferably with something rubber in it, so it generates a lot of thick smoke, smelly thick smoke, and then open up the windows and smoke it out. So much like sage is used, that comes from your Native American culture where white sage is used to get rid of evil spirits. She reckons, a backyard fire, and then you put something noxious in it that creates thick. That's why she said rubber, because it creates like a thick smoke. And then you smoke out this thing. So coincidentally, around the time that one of this particular occasions where he'd seen this scary big black shadow, his neighbours were having a bonfire. They'd been tidying up the yard, and so they had the big stacked up bonfire. And they were burning it, and they were burning all kinds of stuff on it. So it was big, smoky, gross bonfire. So he took advantage of that and opened up all the windows and got the smoke to pour through the house. After that, he never saw him again. Wow. He was gone. So it worked. His mum did crack the shits, though.
Oh, of course.
Mrs. Brown. She cracked the shit. She's like, hey...
As you would. Come on, mate.
I mean, I'd be pretty pissed off if one of our kids was like, Dave's having a bonfire.
Let's open all the windows and doors.
And then let alone having to explain, it's to get rid of the shadow man, Mum. Yeah. I would love to have been a fly on the wall with that conversation, Will. I would love to have seen your mum's reaction. Yeah. Oh, dear. So that's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, a good one.
Another one, Tank. So we've got all these legends here in Australia that so many I'm finding out about I had no idea about.
No, not at all.
So many cool ones. Now, he has an even more terrifying story that occurred down here. So he's moved down from Perth as well. He's had a lot. Again, he's like me, he attracts creepy stuff. Yeah. Creepy stuff. I've known him since high school, and yes, he's another one. He is of Viking descent, so I do put it down to that. It's that weird old world thing. Yeah. And me being a ranger, we just naturally, people already assume we're daywalker vampire soul stealers. Yeah. Yeah, we've already got that stigma. yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to read you his story called The Torso. It just sounds gross already. When I lived in Dalyellup, I would wake up at night to some noise of something coming down the hall. It would get closer and closer, and then I would see it in the corner of the room. This thing. It was a massive blob of a thing, and as it got closer I could see it was a torso with arms. It would start in the corner of the room and then drag itself along the floor towards the bed. Some nights it would climb up the bed. This also appeared during a bout of my sleep paralysis. So it started in a sleep paralysis state where he witnessed this and he could see his wife was still awake sitting on the edge of the bed getting herself ready for bed, and he could see this thing next to her coming up the bed.
Well, that's worse.
So this wasn't a one-off. He saw this thing not just in sleep paralysis. It became, when he'd go to bed at night, he'd know, he could hear it coming. And it just creeps me out. It creeps me out. So basically, as he describes it, is what you'd imagine if it was a 7-foot woman with no legs.
Wow.
Yeah. And it would drag itself along the floor. Its face it started off when he first started seeing it, had like a black, hollow face, and there wasn't much detail to it.
Yeah.
And then it got braver, and it would get closer and closer, and he started to see more detail in the face, and it was like an obese woman with a lot of blemishes on her face. It was quite totally frightening and horrid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they moved out of that house, and it stopped happening. He's never seen it since.
Yeah.
But he was watching a movie, and there was this witch woman in it.
Oh, no.
And this is a Japanese film, and it was based on an old Japanese urban legend.
Yeah.
This chills me, I hate it. So this thing is called a tuk-tuk.
Oh.
Now, the reason behind the name, the tuk-tuk, is that that's the sound its hands make on the floor as it rushes towards you.
Ew.
Tuk, 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 tuk.
Not cool.
Pretty gross.
That's gross, man.
Yeah, so he's watching this movie, like reliving this horror that he had when he lived in this house. Like, it was a regular thing that he would see this thing.
Yeah.
And even freakier that he hears in this movie that it's a Japanese, like, spirit thing that purposely follows people and drives them to the point of insanity. That's the whole point of it. It's just to freak you the shit out.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, he mentioned that it made a horrible screeching noise, and it would breathe heavily. Like, make like a mouth breather noise, he said. So he'd sometimes wake up and just hear that kind of heavy breathing in his room, and that would wake him up, and then he'd obviously go, oh shit, it's back.
Cool. Well, I'm not sleeping tonight.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Awful. Friggin' awful.
Anyway.
Oh, thanks, Will, again, for freaking us out. It's one of those ones that you'd picture would be under your bed.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. No.
Check under your bed tonight, folks. So I just sort of questioned him, like, would you think maybe there'd been a Japanese family living in the house before you that might have brought something over with them? Who knows?
Who knows?
But yeah, try explaining that one. If anyone's got an explanation as to what that was, I'd like to hear it.
Passing car.
Passing car. Swamp gas.
Swamp gas. Swamp gas.
Swamp gases. Definitely swamp gases. Yep. Oh. I just want to point out the noise in the background. Just listen. That's just my dog, Ruby. She's snoring. It's not a ghost or a spectre or a torso or a Wadachi or a tut-tut or something. It's just my snory, sniffly old lady dog. And this is what I sleep with every night, plus Jimmy's snoring.
What? I don't snore.
You bloody do. I'm going to tell you a very quick story before we have to say goodbye because we are running out of time. But I just wanted to drop in a little personal one from where I grew up, another Kalamunda area. So those of you that are from that area, you'll know of the Mahogany Inn. Now, the Mahogany Inn is said to be haunted, but the story says it's haunted by Moondyne Joe.
Right.
But Moondyne Joe died in like a mental facility in Fremantle. So I don't really think he'd go back all the way to Mundaring to haunt it. That's a long way for a ghost to travel. I don't know how they travel, if there's secret portals or something. But there was also a ranger or something that maybe got killed there, the legend goes, or something. Because he was a bit of a cad, old Moondyne Joe. But tell you what, we went to the Mahogany Inn when I was little and with all the family, because we used to go to Fred Jacoby Park for family get-togethers. That was the go-to place. We'd walk along the CYO kind of pipeline, dare each other to go over the bit that's really high, and if you fall off you will probably break your neck, but we used to do it every single time. And we'd constantly scare ourselves with stories of bunyips, and, you know, it was just one of those areas. It was super spooky, and then we'd all dare each other, obviously, let's go to the Mahogany Inn, you know, dare.
Yeah.
So we did, and we're going up the stairs, and the bastards have got mannequins set up in the rooms upstairs. So you walk up, you're already like waiting to see a ghost. And so we go in and I'm like, Jesus Christ, there's like a woman standing in a room. And I'm like, oh, it's just a mannequin. So we're all relaxed and we're like, oh, this is all garbage. We've not seen any ghosts. And then everyone starts walking down the stairs. And then I'm at the back and walking back down and go past this door. And I'm like, just eyeing out the corner of my eye, looking at this mannequin, because mannequins freak me out as it is. I always expect them to move. So I'm eyeing the mannequin, just glancing, and then I saw movement, so I turned to look, and there's a bloke standing right behind this mannequin. And I'm like, where did that mannequin come from? Yeah. And as I'm walking down, I'm like, I'm sure there wasn't one there before. I looked back into the room, and there was no man mannequin behind the lady. So it was there for like a split second. I was like, oh, that's a creepy man mannequin. Jesus Christ. Because I was like, where did that come from? Only to turn around and it was gone again. So that was pretty creepy.
That's very creepy.
I ran down those stairs.
Yep. You were then the first one out of there.
I was. I beat all the cousins. But I still remember thinking to myself, oh, it was just a mannequin. Stop being silly. You probably just like were past where you could see it. But I'm like, no, it was behind the lady and I can still see the lady. Yeah. So there you go. Mahogany Inn. Check it out. Check it out. And on that note, it's time to say goodnight again, folks. I'm sorry to completely ruin your sleep for the next couple of nights, but that's what we're here for. We're here to spook you. We're here to make you chat, give you things to talk about. Hopefully, and I'm sure it will, this episode's given you plenty to chat about. A big thank you to everyone whose stories were featured this evening. And if you have a spooky tale to send about absolutely anything, including people dressing up, as we've covered.
And thanks for ruining my sleep for the week, Will.
Yeah. Yep, you've wrecked it. It's gone.
It's gone.
But yes, please send me your stories. And I'm happy to say that I have set up a Podbean account, which I will be sending, putting the link on the Facebook page. So those podcast savvy people will now be able to download the episodes and listen to them later on. So you'll be able to listen to me anywhere. You'll be able to listen to my sultry sounds anywhere you are. Technology. So on that note, have a glorious evening. Apologies again for ruining your sleep. This is Morgan.
And Jamie.
And Ruby, the snoring dog. Let me just get a little closer. Good night, folks. Stay creepy. Bye.